Good morning, Mr. Selega. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Mr. Chair.
Sorry. I'm wondering why I have all the 4 files at the same time. So, yes, are you ready?
Yes, Chairperson, we are ready.
We're starting a little late. We'll try and make up for the time.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, Chairperson. The witness for this morning is Ms Venete Klein. She is indicated that she's comfortable taking the oath as opposed to the affirmation.
Yes, please administer the oath of affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Venete.
Any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
None at all.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes, I do.
Do you swear that the evidence will give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing else but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you. Solicitor. Mr. Seleka,
Should I explain to the Chairperson?
Yeah, no. The arrangements with the files does cause some confusion. So I looked at Ms. Klein's statement in front of me in the file that was put up, and I realized it was very clean. So it couldn't be the one that I had read, because the one I'd read, I'd made some notes on it. So I had to ask them to give me the file that has got the one on which I made notes. So it turns out that that one is in Mr. Tsotsi's bundle. So,
I see.
so but it's okay. I just wanted to have the one which has got my notes.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
Beg your pardon, Chair.
Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, Ms. Klein will be touching mainly on the aspect regarding the suspension of the executives, the exit negotiations with the executives. There is a portion relating to the secondment of Mr. Molefe, the extension of that secondment, the permanent placement of Mr. Molefe, that also features, or rather in which he also features, and hopefully we will touch on that as well.
Oh, that's fine.
Ms. Klein, thank you for assisting the Commission It's a fact-finding inquiry. There are no findings of guilt or not guilt. I will ask you to please address the chairperson when you are answer to their questions. And you have the bundle before you. Let me just confirm. Chairperson, the bundles we are using to place it on record is Eskom Bundle 02, Exhibit.
Yes, Eskom Bundle 02.
Correct,
Yeah,
Chairperson.
that's the bundle we'll be using.
Exhibit
Okay,
U14.
okay.
Ms. Klein, you have that bundle in front of you. It will have an index that indicates what is contained in the file. The first of those documents is your affidavit to this commission. And attached to the affidavit is your statement to the Hawks, wherein you deal, I believe, with the secondment of Mr. Molefe and permanent placement. In the interest of time, Ms. Klein, if you may go to page 2 of the documents in the bundle. So the page numbering I will be referring to are the page numbers in red, the top right-hand corner. You confirm to the chairperson that you were one of the board members appointed in December 2014. When you confirm,
Yes, Chair, I confirm that.
thank you. And that you were serving on Eskom board for the first time in respect of that appointment.
That is correct, Chair.
I think, Ms. Klein, try and raise your voice, please.
All right. I
Oh,
will do.
yeah, speak closer to the mic.
Okay.
So
If you speak softly, Ms. Klein, Mr. Selega speaks very softly, so I'll be the only one speaking aloud in this hall.
I hear you, Chair. I'll try. Is that
Yeah.
better?
Okay.
he's a gentleman. Ms. Klein, the affidavit then deals with the introduction, your profession in paragraph 3, that you are, is it a profession or is it a career? I was a chartered director, CDSA, and have graduated from various international executive programs, including Senior Executive Program at Harvard University and Executive Development Program. Executive Development Program at the New York School in New York. In addition, I hold several international qualifications from MIT, INSEAD, IMD, and Advert.
That is correct,
Is
Chair.
that correct? And you have served as an executive director and non-executive director on various boards. Until recently, well, various boards including Barclays Group, Ltd, the Reserve Bank and Old Mutual Health. Until recently, you served as chairperson of the Institute of Directors, South Africa.
Correct, Chair.
Is that you have the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants.
Yeah.
Is it the equivalent of such body?
Yes, it is. Chair, we have many directors in South Africa, and the Institute of Directors does all of the training for directors in South Africa. Not everybody is a member, but obviously most directors choose to become members so that they can get some form of qualification and certainly the training in order to serve.
Does it deal with ethical issues relating to directors?
Very definitely. That's one of the biggest things that's focused on as a director.
So you would be au fait on issues relating to ethics and professionalism of directors?
Correct, sir. Correct, Chairperson.
That would be both in the private and the public sector?
That is correct, Chair.
Yes. Yeah, you carry on other aspects of your achievements, which I will not go into. Let's tell the chairperson about how your appointment on the Eskom board came about.
Chairperson, there was an ad run in the paper for various of the department's companies. SAA, I remember, was one, Eskom was one, etc. And I was then asked or nominated. I was asked whether I would serve, and I then agreed that I would serve. And I know my nomination was signed off by Mr. Lionel Adendorf. Yeah.
Who asked you?
Sorry?
Who asked you if you would be...
Lionel Adendorf.
Mr.?
Lionel Adendorf.
Okay.
Who I had known from, he was the head of communications for the first Minister of Women, Children and Disabled.
Yes.
Yes.
He was within government.
Sorry?
He was within government.
He was, but I think at the time when he asked me, he was not.
Oh, okay.
He was not in government at that time.
Okay. Did you know whether he had any connections with Eskom or anybody connected with Eskom? Why was he interested in?
No, not to my knowledge. I remember, Chairperson, that I had also seen the ad, you know, and I'd actually, oddly enough, always said in private sector, because that's where I used to work, that I'd never want to serve in government because of what I imagined was the complexities. And it was in a discussion that he just said to me, you know, isn't this something? Because what maybe didn't come out here, I'd actually retired from running the retail bank of ABSA a couple of years prior. So I had a bit of capacity, I had a time on my hands, and that's when the discussion came up. And I had seen it, and I had no objection at the time. I thought it may be a good idea for me to serve.
Okay.
Chairperson.
Chairperson, the name appears on page 3, paragraph 6 of Mr. Lionel Ricardo Adendorf. Ms. Klein, if there was an advert, does the advert call for people to be nominated or for people to apply?
Chairperson, to the best of my understanding, it calls for people to be nominated. I think it's put out in the public space to see who may be interested. And then I think if you're interested, you've got to go online and get a nomination form. I think that's how it works, if my recollection serves me well.
So did you follow that process? Did
Yes.
you go online?
Absolutely.
And completed the nomination form?
Yeah. Yes, Chairperson, sorry.
Now, you were here yesterday because you were scheduled to testify yesterday, but you couldn't.
Correct, Chairperson.
We had Mr. Tsotsi here yesterday. You saw the reference made to the Fundutsi report.
Correct. Yes, Chairperson.
Oh, Chairperson, I got a note that the transcribers are unable to hear Ms. Klein.
Okay. So I've got to speak either louder or sit closer.
Yeah, I think just drop the mic
Oh, okay.
a little.
Well, I'm surprised they can't hear her, but they do hear you. But I think I've come to accept that you have a soft voice and it's difficult. I think for the whole week I've been saying, please raise your voice, but I think that's just how your voice is. It is soft. But obviously they do hear you.
Yeah. It's a sign of change that I've listened.
Okay, all right. No, that's fine. Let's all try to, well, I guess I don't have to try, to be loud enough for everybody to hear.
Correct, Chair.
Okay.
So, Ms. Klein, you saw the reference being made to the Fundutsi
I
report
did, sir.
and how an email address info portal 1 was used to circulate a list of names for people to be appointed on the board and subcommittees in particular. Do you have any knowledge of your name having formed part of that list?
I would have been very surprised. I don't know who Info Portal is, and if you tell me my name was on it, I would be surprised because that was not the process that I understood that the department followed.
What would be your response? You would have been aware that the December 2014 board of Eskom has been referred to as the Gupta board. What would you tell the chairperson?
Very uncomfortable to have my name there. That's all I can say to you, Chairperson. Can I maybe just add on something?
Please do.
In fact, more uncomfortable because I think in Mr. Tsotsi's response to the chair yesterday, I think, Chair, you gave him a little bit of latitude to express how he felt. And Mr. Tsotsi then alluded to some organogram that had appeared in the paper some years ago, connecting everybody to everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
To the Gupta, to
Yes.
your question.
Yes,
so
I think
specifically, who was connected to the Guptas.
Yeah.
And I think what was uncomfortable for me specifically is that on that organogram, I am connected to the then minister of, I'm not sure what minister it was, but it was Minister Van Rooyen, who I had never met. Don't know him, never met Minister Van Rooyen. I think the closest that you want to come in terms of looking at the organogram, I felt a little bit more insulted than anything else, was that somebody who worked as an advisor for Minister Van Rooyen at the time was a gentleman by the name of Ian Whitley, who worked for me at the bank a couple of levels down. And here I was being put down as somebody connected to Minister Van Rooyen, and he's got an advisor. I was very uncomfortable by. So your question about being put in as a Gupta board member really didn't feel good for me at that time. I'm sorry to bring that in.
Yes, no, that's fine. But are you saying that you are aware of the report or article that Mr. Tsotsi was talking about, where, as you say, there was
Yes.
an organogram? You
Yes.
knew, you had been aware of that.
No, absolutely. And I'm just expressing a discomfort to
Okay,
add on
yes.
to how do I feel about being, I don't know, if it's
Yeah.
called a Gupta, did you say Gupta appointee, sir? I'm not
Gupta
Yes.
board.
Gupta board. Okay. So, sorry, I kind of went both ways with it.
Yes, okay.
So we understand the board was appointed, the board on which you served at Eskom was appointed effective 11 December 2014.
I think that's correct.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
you say that.
Yes, yes,
Paragraph
yes.
7 of your affidavit.
Correct.
And you then go through an induction, which you deal with it. on page 6, paragraph 23 of your affidavit, the board induction meeting held on 16 January 2015. You see that?
Yes, sir.
That's in January 2015.
Yes.
Now tell the chairperson, you would have heard the evidence about the first board meeting scheduled for the 26th of February 2015, and that board meeting didn't take place. What reasons, were you aware of that before that?
I was aware that it wasn't taking place, and I think I even put into evidence my discomfort at the time. But Chair, if I may can I just step back from there?
Yeah.
Chair, I keep on hearing that this was the first board meeting. In fact, I heard yesterday too that there was the first board meeting in March the 11th. And I've heard quite a lot about, we didn't know the executives and how could we make decisions, etc. Chair, that is not true. The first meeting was in January. And we had the board induction, which was another 2 days. And these things can be verified. In fact, you asked, and Chair, I was supposed to speak yesterday, so I suppose it was good I was here to listen to Mr. Tsotsi's evidence. Mr. Tsotsi shared with me on the 16th of January at the first board meeting which subcommittees we were going to be on. I remember you asking the question, so when were we? I found out on the 16th of January at the first board meeting. Then we had the induction chairperson.
So I thought the 16th was for the induction.
No.
That was the first board meeting.
Yeah, we need to just go and check those dates again.
Yes, okay.
I actually stepped away from your chairperson and I went to go and look at it yesterday. There was a full board meeting on the 16th of January, which is where Mr. Tsotsi shared with me about my, you asked questions about when people were made aware.
Yes.
Mr. Tsotsi told me at that particular meeting that I'm going to be chairperson of social and ethics. But I guess the point I want to make, Chair, is that to say that the very first meeting that this board had with management on the 11th of March is not correct. Because in the meeting of the 16th of January, I was told I was going to chair social and ethics. I was also told that I was going to be serving on people and governance, as well as investment and finance committee. Now, in that time, from the 16th of January until the 11th of March, chairperson, we can check the dates. Obviously, it's not in my statement because at the time I wasn't, I wasn't responding to what questions were asked yesterday. We had at least 2 of each of those meetings. 2 meetings of people and governance, 2 meetings of IFC, investment and finance, and 2 meetings of, what was the third one I said? IFC, people and governance, and sustainability. And I know that for a fact because on the 18th of February was my son's birthday, and I'll never forget, I chaired that meeting. And it just, it just was such a long meeting. So the reason I raised this, chairperson, it's not true to say we had our first meeting on the 11th.
Yes, yes.
I just wanted to.
No, it's important. You should clear that. Certainly put your your perspective and your understanding of what the position is. So you say that the first board meeting was on the 16th
on the 16th of January, correct.
And then the induction would have been when?
Yes.
The following day, or?
I think if I get the dates correct, it was, I think we were 16th and it was either 14th and 15th or 2 days later.
Okay.
But it was thereabouts. We can just confirm those dates.
But it was consecutive days?
It was consecutive days.
Yes, okay.
But this was a full board meeting, Chair.
Yes. Now, at the board meeting, at the first board meeting, do you have a recollection of what types of issues were discussed, or was it just a meeting for everybody to get to know one another and so on?
I actually think that I referred to it in my in my affidavit. Let me, if you don't mind, Chairperson, I just want to have a look.
If there's something that can help refresh your memory.
I don't see it here, Chairperson, but I know that given your questioning yesterday, I specifically went to go and look at when exactly was I told that I was going to be Chairperson of sustainability.
Yes.
And that's when I saw it was, and in that board meeting, Chairperson, the CEO, Sidisa Matona, gave the board an overview of there was a chairperson's report I remember seeing there, and then there was the CEO's report. But I don't have all the details on it right now.
At the first board meeting?
At the first board meeting.
Okay, all right.
Which was as well as on the second one, which was on the 11th of March. But the point I was trying to make is that the meetings in between,
yes,
it's not true to say that this board never interacted with executives.
Yes.
There were a number of them.
So you have the first board meeting.
Yes.
You have induction. And then one of the points you are making is that between, or rather after the induction.
Yes.
Between that date and the 9th of March, the 11th of March, yes, there were certain meetings of committees where committees, at least the ones you served yes on, where they began to do some work and also interacted with executives or not?
Absolutely, Chairperson.
Yes.
Because remember, the executives responsible and the CEO in most cases
yes
would have attended those meetings.
Yes. And you were a member of what, 2 committees?
No, Chairperson, 3. I was the Chairperson of Social and Ethics.
Yes.
I was on the People and Governance, and then I also was on the and I'm having an over 60s moment now.
Is it the investment and finance?
Yes, IFC. Sorry, Chairperson,
okay.
that was the third one. Yeah, but we had a number of meetings in between.
Do you have a recollection of about how many committee meetings you may have attended between the induction and the meeting of the 9th or 11th of March, roughly, in different committees?
In the committees, including the induction and the board meetings? No,
excluding induction and the board.
I would, Chairperson, sorry to cut in, but I think there was at least 2 of each.
Okay.
Which
would then make it about 6, at least 6?
At least 6,
yes,
besides induction and 2 board meetings there.
Okay,
yes.
All right.
Yes, Chairperson.
Okay. Mr.
Sorry, Chairperson,
yes.
I wanted to answer Mr. Seleka's question about the meeting of the 26th of February. That was the question, Chairperson?
Yes.
Yes. There was a meeting scheduled, and the night before the meeting, we got given a notice, I'm not even sure, I think it came on mail, to say that this meeting has been cancelled. And I had a big problem with that, Chairperson, because I remember writing to the Chairperson and saying to the Chairperson, how is it even possible that we can cancel a meeting at such short notice, number one? Also, I referred the Chairperson to Section 52 or Rule 52 of the PFMA, where we needed to get the corporate plan signed off within 30 days of a certain period, and we were going to be in breach of the PFMA if we did not have that meeting. If I remember correctly, there was another board member, I'm not sure, but I think it may have been Mr. Pamensky, who also asked questions around governance. So I had a particular problem with that. I must also say, Chairperson, I didn't get a response to my email.
That's so.
Yes, that is so. And I know, Chairperson, we've agreed that I will keep my responses short, but I think it's important to point out to you that you know, in listening to recordings, obviously, remember, these are 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And some of us don't remember as well as others. So I've
Yes.
had to go back to listen to recordings. In the meeting of the 11th of March, before the minister arrived, the chairperson took extreme umbrage with board members directly interacting with executives. And at that stage, Chairperson, I then asked the chairperson he could give me an opportunity to just address it from a governance perspective. And I said, Chairperson, I understand that you would prefer for board members to work through you only. The problem that I have is, given the complexity of the business, given we were on a burning platform, and I'm sure we'll talk about that more, was that I had written to the chairperson on numerous occasions about big matters, including the 26th, and I had received no response. And I actually put it to the chairperson. I said, Chairperson, I don't think it's fair for you to ask us not to engage with the executives if you yourself are not responding to critical matters that the board would need, that I would need an answer on. And the chairperson's response, and in fairness to him, you know, he just said, look, people understand I get more than 200 emails a day, so I apologize. And between him and the company secretary, they were going to try and do better. But I found it very difficult that there were huge matters being raised in the media and all over. And even issues coming out of subcommittee meetings that I needed input from the chair on, and I was not getting any response. So I'm sorry to have digressed, Chairperson.
No, that's fine. It's important that you, from your side, be able to articulate what you believe is important to give me a complete picture of what the situation was. So, so that's fine.
Thank you, Chair. I hope I've answered the question on the 26th.
The 26th of February.
Which was the question, I think.
Yeah, but now, I didn't get your answer clearly to the chairperson's question, because, let me start with this. The affidavit in the paragraph we've referred to says the board induction meeting was held on 16 January 2015 and was arranged by the company secretary.
Yes, Chair.
You then have the agenda items specified.
Yes.
From there, you go to paragraph 24. Well, let me carry on with paragraph 23, where you conclude by saying, I recall having left this meeting, which is the induction, feeling rather concerned, both by the enormity of the challenges which had correctly been highlighted by the minister. That says the minister was present in that meeting, at the induction. You see where I am? On page 7.
Yes. Can I just reread quickly so that I'm clear, Chair? I recall having left this meeting feeling rather concerned about... I'm sorry.
I will read it on record for you. Is it?
No. I've got it.
Oh.
I've got it.
What paragraph are you both on?
Page 7, Chairperson.
I am
the
at
top
7.
paragraph. The very top.
What paragraph on page 7?
The very top. It
okay.
It starts from the previous page.
Oh, okay. Now I see. I recall. Okay.
Yes. I recall having left this meeting feeling rather concerned, both by the enormity of the challenges which had correctly been highlighted by the minister, and by the fact that Eskom did not appear to have concrete strategies in place to address these concerns. The next paragraph is about a meeting having been called by Mr. Pukudu to take place on 26 February 2015, but was later cancelled and did not take place. Now that would have been a board meeting. Is that correct?
Correct, Chair.
What we don't see in your affidavit is reference to any board meeting prior to 26 of February 2015, apart from the induction meeting.
Chairperson, to answer the question, remember I sat here yesterday and I heard various things, and that obviously made me go back and look at my notes. So if it is that part of this was incorrect based on dates, then I want to acknowledge that it was incorrect. What I would like to ask Chairperson though is, can I have a copy of that particular board meeting? We should have it on file because, do we have a copy of that board meeting of the 16th of January?
You mean the minutes?
Sorry, I mean the minutes, Chairperson. Because what I'm wanting to look at, Chairperson, is I don't believe the minister was at that induction. I think what I'm referring to there is a meeting with the minister previously where she had highlighted all of our problems in the organization. But I just want to be clear that we are talking about the same thing. Because at the time of writing this affidavit, that is my understanding. But sitting here yesterday, I went back and it looks like we had 2 additional days of induction, not just this one. So what I would like is, if we do have it on record, is the minutes of the meeting of the 16th of January, please.
Well,
Is
I
that
don't
possible?
know if it was an induction. I don't know if there would be minutes. Because remember, what Mr. Selega is saying, you have said you went back after hearing Mr.
Yes.
Tsotsi's evidence to check, and you said the first board meeting was on the 16th of January. But he's pointing out that in your statement, that is reflected as having
As an
been induction. So I think what could be done is, well, I don't know if, Mr. Selega, you know whether you have got any minutes for the 16th of January or not. Because if you do, then they can be given. But if you don't, Ms. Klein might need to, we might have to go on with the evidence. But
Yes, Chair.
during the breaks or in lunch break, tea break, if she's able to talk to somebody or to try and obtain information that could help her remember exactly what the position is, that would be fine. And later on, we can come back to the point.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you,
and
Chairperson.
if she needs more time than today, she could come back later on. She could put up a supplementary affidavit to say, I've since had the opportunity to look at ABCD, and I wish to correct my statement in the following way, or wish to supplement it in the following way. This is the position, and if necessary, she can come back and deal with that on another day.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
That will be in order, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. If I may just add, I would like to do that, as you said, Chair, because I went to go and read it last night. There is definitely a set of minutes.
Yes, okay.
For it. Thank you.
Okay.
In fact, we may even get it for you at the tea break.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Klein.
Of course, Ms. Klein, it's something that will be interesting to see how it gets resolved as to whether there was a board meeting on the 16th as opposed to the induction, because as things stand, it looks like both you and Mr. Tsotsi say the same thing with regard to when the induction was. And in terms of the statements, none of you says there was a board meeting on the 16th. But of course, as you say, after you had his evidence, you went and had and checked, and you
Yes.
think there was.
Yes.
So we will see how it's sorted out.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, might I add, the two top executives say the same as well as Mr. Tsotsi,
Yes,
that
yes.
the 26th of February was the first board meeting scheduled
Yes.
for 2015.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, all right.
So, Ms. Klein, you said when the meeting of the 26th of February 2015 was cancelled, you raised an objection.
That is correct, Chair.
And your objection, was it to have the meeting take place? Specifically?
Chair, I was more concerned at the time, looking through my paperwork, of the fact that we were going to be missing a deadline because that board meeting was also going to be looking at the approval of the corporate plan. And in terms of Section 52 of the PFMA, you only have 30 days in which to get your corporate plan in, and I was concerned that we would miss. That was the one thing. But I think on a personal level, from a governance perspective, you don't send a mail to people the night before the time and say the meeting is cancelled. I had a problem with that.
Yeah.
Actually, depending on what time the meeting was going to be on the 26th, if somebody was to travel from another province, they might have already arrived in Gauteng to spend the night so that they are on time for the meeting the following day. And then they get a message saying the meeting is cancelled.
Correct, Chair.
Yeah.
Ms. Klein, sorry, I just want to go back to something.
Of course, I guess the part of the problem with the cancellation is you were not given any reasons.
Not at that time. There were
At that
reasons.
time.
Yeah, at that time, there were no reasons given. We heard about reasons afterwards.
Yes, but were you ever given reasons? You say not at that time.
No, not at that time. Afterwards, we were told that the minister cancelled it. And I mean, sitting here listening to Mr. Tsotsi, I heard that the president cancelled it. All I knew was, it couldn't be right from a governance perspective for a cancellation to take place to a scheduled board meeting where the company was in crisis. And, how do you cancel this? And then we also had the corporate plan that needed signing off.
Yes, but my question is whether you were given reasons at any stage why the meeting of the 26th February was cancelled, because Mr.
Yes.
Tsotsi said he asked the acting DG who called what the reasons were, and the acting DG said the minister didn't give me any reasons.
Yeah.
So when he was giving evidence, I was concerned that here is a board meeting, somebody outside of the board, whether it's the president or minister, seem to want it cancelled. They are not scheduled to appear to attend this meeting. It's not their meeting. What are the reasons? And then it gets cancelled even though he didn't know the reasons.
Yes.
That was part of my concern. So when you say you were not given reasons at that time, I'm interested to find out whether you were given reasons later as to why it was cancelled.
Yes, Chair. We were told that the minister cancelled it.
Yes, but that's not a reason. That's just who
accept.
cancelled.
No, that I accept. I accept that. But when you are told by your chairperson that was the only reason I can give you,
Yes,
and it was after the fact, after raising the objection.
yes. So what I'm saying is that explains the origin of the idea of cancelling the meeting. that it came from the minister or the
Yes.
president, but it doesn't explain why it was necessary to cancel the meeting. That you were never told at any stage, even after to say, here are the reasons why that meeting had to be cancelled. You were never told that.
No, Chairperson, we were never told.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Klein, you made a statement to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, submitted a written statement. Recall that?
Correct, Chair, yes, I do.
A copy of that statement is contained in that bundle on page 347.
Mr. Slega, is there room for that mic to come closer to you?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah, okay.
it's when
I'm struggling more and more to hear you.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes, Chair, I've got that.
You got that on
Yes.
page 347. It's Ms. Venete Klein's statement to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee.
What's the page number?
Page 347, Chair.
Okay.
Yes. Now, Ms. Klein, that statement is dated 19 October 2017, which appears on page 395.
Yes, Chair?
Page 395.
Correct.
Thank you. Now, on paragraph 6 of that statement, which you found on page 349, you see that paragraph deals with what you refer to as the first board meeting following my appointment took place
Yes.
on 16 January
Correct.
2015.
Correct, Chair.
And you deal with the agenda items included, amongst others, a war room update, selective demand, curtailment, financial status update, consideration of board committee handover, and so on. You see that?
Yes, I do.
And then you have that paragraph, that sentence again. I recall having left this meeting feeling rather concerned both by the enormity of the challenges which had correctly been highlighted by the Minister and by the fact that Eskom did not appear to have concrete strategies in place to address these concerns, which is a replica of, or which is replicated
Yes, correct, Chair.
in your affidavit to this commission.
Yes.
Now, if you go back to your affidavit, go back to the end of it, which is page.
I'm just sorry. Ms. Klein, in this statement that you made, you first speak of a meeting you had with the minister on the 12th of December 2014, and you say that meeting was attended by a number of new board members as well as 2 members of the previous board, Ms. Mabute and Mr. Zotzi. And then you indicate the important points which you noted which came out of that meeting. And then you refer to the first board meeting being on the 16th of January, which is consistent with what you just said earlier on. And then you talk about a report you received on the 29th January on plant performance. And I see you talk about what happened on the 29th January. Mr. Selek, I just note that Mr. Tsotsi didn't deal with some of these things which appear to be important. Now, I'm saying that simply in this context, that Ms. Klein made the point earlier that prior to the 11th of March, prior to the meeting of the 11th of March, there was quite some activity that had been going on, by which I think she meant to say some of us as board members or members of various committees had quite some engagement with the work, with our work and with some of the executives. So one would have thought that Mr. Tsotsi would have also told us about some of these things, particularly when I raised the question of how the new board members would have known what was happening at Eskom. And also, I think I said to him, as chairperson, I would take it that he would know if members of the board, had been, were in a position where had been doing any work, So I'm just surprised that he didn't mention these things. But we can deal with it. I think the part of what I'm talking about seems to address the point that Ms. Klein was making, namely, between the induction and the 11th of March, there was a lot of activity that some of the board members were involved in terms of the work. And I see that she refers to some reports that they received on plant performance and so on, which may mean that they had begun to do quite some work, at least in terms of familiarizing themselves with what was going on at Eskom.
Yes, Chair, may I put...
You might have a better picture.
Yeah, let me ask Ms. Klein, because
Yes.
Ms. Klein, we have an affidavit by Dr. Ngubane. Because of this issue, then I will have to refer you to that affidavit, which is in a separate bundle. Dr. Ngubane let me read his affidavit so that
or should we take the tea adjournment now? Because it's 11:15, and then when we come back, you can read it to Ms. Klein.
I have it here, Chair, if I may.
Okay,
just,
all right. Okay.
Just dispose of that quickly. Would you please provide Ms. Klein with Dr. Ngubane's affidavit? Because None of the persons who have given us the affidavit, Mr. Tsotsi, the executives, including Dr. Ngubane, allude to, well, let me say specifically Dr. Ngubane as a new member, similarly in your position, alludes to the engagement with the executives that you're referring to. The affidavit, I believe, is being placed before you. It may be contained also in fact, in your file. Chairperson, for your purposes, that's page 593. But that will be in bundle, Eskom bundle 03.
Chairperson, do I go to, do you want me to go to that one as well? Or?
Yeah, they can assist you.
It's,
Go ahead, even if I haven't got it, I
Even
might
if
be
you don't
able
have
to.
it, yeah.
I've got it.
Yeah,
Thank you,
okay.
Chair.
So that's page 8 in the bundle that you have before you, Ms. Klein.
8, is it right?
Page 8, yes.
Are we talking about 8 or 51, Chairperson?
8 at the top of the page. Read.
I've got 593.
Have you told you about the red numbers and black numbers?
Yeah.
No, she might be having, which volume does she have? It might be. This one I have.
Okay, let's take the tea break.
Let's take it.
When we come, you'll get time to attend to it, and then we can look at it after the tea break.
Thank you, Chair.
We'll take the tea break and resume at 25 to 12.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn.
Thank you. Now, hence my statement, where I express a view, not on Mr. Matona as a person, but my view as a business person coming onto a government board for the first time of how I felt about certain things that was being said. So Chairperson, to you, I cannot agree with that. There were various meetings held in between.
The second one, Ms. Klein, and you can also comment to the chairperson on that, is the audio which I would like to play. That's the board in committee meeting after having met with the minister on the 11th of March, 2015. Timestamp or the page reference in the transcript. 0.
Have to do, and we're asking ourselves to defer this thing to some other time. No, you can't work.
The information is what you. Well, I don't have information, Chief.
What information are we looking for, Chief?
No, you said that we do have.
Did you recognize the voice of the
Ye-
two persons talking?
Yes, it's Mr. Tsotsi and Norman Beloy. Yes,
I'm
Chairperson.
sorry, what
Sorry.
was the answer?
It was Norman Beloy, one of the board members, and the chairperson, Zola Tsotsi, asking the question.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Lane.
Available, and I'm asking for that report so that I can see what is contained in that report. And then secondly, I said that the issues from the war room, the information has never been sent to the board, so that.
Do you hear what he says there? That, secondly, you can read it if you see it there. Just read it on record.
All right, it
Yeah, on the
says, and
microphone.
secondly, that the issues from the war room, is that the one?
Yes,
The information has never been sent to the board.
yes. And
Sorry,
your comment to the chairperson?
Chairperson, yes? You want me to?
Yes.
To respond.
Comment on that, yes.
Yeah,
to
no,
the
absolutely. The board had a big problem, or let me speak for myself, that there was a war room established by the president at the time. The war room is running on the one side. You've got a new board who's now got all the challenges as I've outlined in my affidavit and in Parliament. We have got a chairperson coming and telling us that there's certain things that must happen, and you've got the minister on the other side. And I talk for myself, Chairperson, we never get anything that is congruent. So what Mr. Beloy is saying, we're never getting to read it again. Secondly, the issue of, let me just read it correctly. I can see what is combined in that report, and then secondly, I said that the issues from the war room, the information has never been sent to the board. The context of that, Chairperson, the context of that is, there isn't a formal report coming to the board of what is happening in the war room. But what is coming is various pieces. The war room is saying, and as an example, one of the things that was discussed, which is why I am so adamant that there were board meetings before. One of the things that was discussed was that we were going to be able to do some severance packages and allowing people to leave. The war room, in one of their minutes, so we see this in a minute now, says the board cannot do that. And as a board member, I'm sitting here thinking, I have a fiduciary responsibility. We are making decisions based on what we believe to be right. The war room is giving us one version. Mr. Beloy is correct. It's not in a formal report, but you're forever hearing you can and you can't from those who've been there. That's the context. Now, I want to go beyond that, Chair, if you'll allow me. The report that he's referring to here is a report that Mr. Tsotsi told us when we were pushing back and forth about the suspensions. Mr. Tsotsi said a lot of work has already been done. And there is a thick report that, so Mr. Tsotsi was saying to us, guys, a lot of work has been done on this. Don't slow us down here. And I can, for the record, tell you, Chairperson, I actually supported Mr. Tsotsi at the time because if a lot of work had been done by way of investigations, Mr. Tsotsi is coming and recommending to us this is the way to move forward. I'm a business person. In fact, I'm not sure how much of this recording we're going to play, but I can tell you if you replay to the end of it, you will hear me as a banker saying that the CFO had told us earlier in this particular meeting, one of the challenges that we faced was that we were running short, we were seriously cash constrained. There was a going concern problem that we were facing. And I wanted to understand what does that mean. So she said, typically you would have a buffer of 4 billion rand for Eskom. So I said, what did that mean? And she then says it meant we had cover for the costs of Eskom for the running for 4 months. So at the end of this recording, if you are still going to go there, I'm not sure, Chair, but assuming we do, you will hear me say, if I take what the CFO has told us, that we should have a buffer of 4 billion. At this stage, we only have 4.9 billion, which means we haven't even got enough money in the bank to carry us for 1 month. And then I went a step further to the board. I said, board members understand, running this operation costs us 30 million rands a day. We cannot be sitting here where the chairperson has given us input and has asked us. The chairperson guided us with the suspensions and we will go through that. You've asked me, I will go through that. And I'm saying, I support the chairperson. We can't sit here toing and froing about something where it's costing this amount of money and it's money we don't have. So in a long way, the report that Mr. Baloyi is referring to is a report that the chairperson said had been done, and I supported the chairperson. If all this work has been done, and you're saying that this is a way forward, I support your chairperson, and I quantify it in terms of numbers.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Klein. You see what Mr. Baloyi was saying there. I see you are trying to qualify what he said, but he plainly said the information from the war room has never been shared with us. And that's really, but you have given your comment.
I think what Ms. Klein is saying, and you must just tell me if I misunderstood what you are saying, Ms. Klein. I think what part of what she was saying is, yes, it is true that certain information was not being given to the board, particularly relating to the war room, as I understand the position, or a request for information from the war room on an official basis. But it could be that board members become aware unofficially of information. That's what I thought you were saying. Is that correct? Is that not correct?
Chairperson, that's exactly correct. Remember, just prior to this meeting, if you go and listen to the recording, the minister comes out and tells us what's come out of the war room, which the minister also did in the meeting the first time she met us.
Yeah.
Because
so information might, the board or different board members might be aware of certain information, but it's not official or it's not formal. That's what you are saying.
Chairperson, that's exactly what I'm saying. And further along, you'll even find where board members are even asking, is it not possible that one or two of us even become part of the war room so we can somehow align what the president has put together in the form of a war room, which has been led by our current president. President Ramaphosa was leading that war room. But none of the board members were there. And the minister was coming to give us information about how things are going wrong. My understanding of listening to the recording here is that what he's saying is, we, the board, are getting bits and pieces of what's coming out of the war room, and it doesn't help us as a board to make proper decisions, as we would understand it to be proper, if you will.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So, just to take further, the Chair is trying to understand what you're saying, Ms. Klein. Would what you refer to in your statement as a meeting with the minister in, I think you say, 12 December 2014, and you give a list of the items there, which includes the war room, which has been run by the Deputy President of the Republic, would that not have been a formal information to you as opposed to hearing informally about issues pertaining to the war room?
Chairperson, we are talking about two different time streams here. We're talking about the minister telling us on the, I think it's 14th, Chairperson, 14th of December, or 12th of December.
12th December 2014.
Right? And then you're talking about the 11th of March, which is a couple of months later, where the minister again talks about the war room. I think what the board was grappling with in that time is bits and pieces coming at us, but no formal representation of what is happening in the war room. We're constantly hearing about the problems as identified by the war room. And I cannot talk for Mr. Beloy. I can talk for myself. And at the time sitting there, I must tell you, I'm sitting there, typically in the board, you'd be given information, and based on the information, you'd make decisions, Chairperson. That's in a typical boardroom. Here you're sitting in a boardroom, you consider all the documents in front of you, you make decisions, and then you get told, but the war room says that you can't do it. So that's on the one hand. Then you've got a chairperson, and I'm sure we'll get to it. The evidence leader, I'm sure, will take us there. A chairperson who comes at us as a board and says, in a meeting with the president, and then we've got to call the minister, and somehow in between all of this, as a board member, you've got to try and make sense. So the point from Mr. Beloy is, I personally had never seen a formal war room report, but we were given extensive input in terms of what came out of it. And the question by the board, is it not possible that one of us can sit on the committee, was discussed more than once because of the divergent pieces of input with which this board was trying to make sense and trying to move forward in the best interest of a very complex situation.
Yes. I wouldn't want to belabor it, but you can see he says it has never come to us and not to him personally. So he seems to refer to the corporate as opposed to the individual. Anyway, but your point, according to you, there would have been interactions prior to the meeting of, is it 11 March or is it 9 March?
Chairperson, there were two interactions. The one interaction was on the 9th of March, and the second interaction was on the 11th of March.
Yes. No, I'm talking prior to those meetings of 11 March, prior to the meeting of 11 March or the 9th of March. Your interaction with, as you say, the executives it would have taken place before those dates.
Correct, Chair.
Yes. Now, let's see how you then respond to this aspect, again arising from the minutes of the 9th of March 2015. Chairperson is Eskom Bundle 02. The minutes of the 9th of March are found on page 62. Chairperson. And then I'll refer to the relevant page where I wish to read. I think it's page 64. Are you there, Ms. Klein?
Page 62, Chair?
Yes, is the
Yes.
minutes of the 9th of March.
Yes, sir.
2015 meeting. Then please go to page 64. Just for you to comment on this through the chairperson. Paragraph from the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It starts with the words, another member. Another member stated that the board should meet with the Minister of Public Enterprises to understand what her expectations were from this inquiry. It was agreed further that clarity was required as to whether the board would continue with its normal duties while the inquiry was underway. As to date, no reason had been given as to why the board meeting of 26 February 2015 had been cancelled by the Minister of PE. Clarity was also required in respect of the board's obligation to the war room. Then, the next paragraph, it was reported that the Audit and Risk Committee had emphasized that the board needed to review the sitting process of the war room, as there was no alliance or alignment between the board and the war room. Members wanted to ascertain the shareholders' view around this issue because at present the board has still not held a board meeting and would need to understand the scope of work and how the committee would function. A concern was raised that the committee could usurp the board's powers. Your comment on those two paragraphs, you can see two issues arise there. One is that the board hasn't held a meeting, but the other seems to be uncertainty about the war room. Your comment to the
Yes, Chairperson. As I said, I cannot, first of all, I wasn't at the meeting of the night. Let's start with that. My comment around it being the first meeting of the board, like I said, the 16th, in fact, Chairperson, what I did get in the, in the break was the full minutes of the board meeting of the 16th of January.
Oh, you got those?
I got the minutes. Now, whether or not that is what then is referred to as the induction.
Yes.
I think is probably where the, what do we call it, maybe the confusion is coming from.
Yes.
Because I've got two packs at my home, 14th and 15th and 16th. So it's possible, I mean, like I said, I just cannot remember that far back.
Yeah.
But I don't have a minute for the 14th and the 15th. I do have a minute for the 16th, and I also have an in-committee minute for later on that evening.
Yeah.
In-committee, where we get told who sits on which committees, etc., etc.
Okay.
So I hope that clarifies maybe my own misunderstanding of whether it was an induction then or... That's to do with the dates. Is that your first question, Chairperson?
Yes, I
Yeah.
think what will be important is to look at the content
I agree.
of the discussions, because an induction meeting and an ordinary meeting should be different.
Yeah. Yes, no, correct. That's important, Ms. Klein, because when I was also doing the comparison between your statement at the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, there where you use the word meeting, the first board meeting, which is in 2017, you wrote that statement, but your affidavit here was in March 2020, that is changed to induction meeting, as opposed to first meeting of the board.
I see that, Chairperson, and I'm happy to say that I could have made a mistake as well. I'm happy to concede that the dates were, so, and I think I was guided by going through all my documents after I met with the team from the Commission. Having gone back and having looked at all my documents, I saw 14, 15, and no minutes. So then when I said, well, but okay, then it's an induction. But listening to Mr. Tsotsi yesterday made me go and read it again. And then I thought, but hold on, how do you at an induction take board resolutions? So I think it's something that maybe the Commission wants to explore a bit further.
Yes, I think it ought to be possible to look at the content, just talk to those who attended,
Yes.
and see what was an induction meeting, maybe if you want to call it that, and what was an ordinary board meeting, or well, maybe I shouldn't say ordinary because of the different categories, but basically a board meeting. So the content of the discussion should indicate. Okay.
Ms. Klein, I think that will then resolve.
Yes.
We could move on.
Yes, Chairperson.
You then have that meeting of the 26th, which is cancelled. We understand then there was a meeting called for the 9th of March. You say you didn't attend that meeting.
No, Chairperson, I could not. We got that on the evening of the 8th, and I unfortunately had an engagement for the next day. But I once again questioned the governance around how we did things. We can't just call meetings at the 11th hour. I mean, I think my biggest concern always around the financial capability, the financial status of Eskom, the running cost of Eskom was around 30 million a day. And I wasn't convinced that if you get a resolution on the 8th and say you must be there the 9th, that everybody's going to be there. So that was my...
But also, if there was a scheduled meeting for the 11th, you wonder why it was necessary to have the meeting on the 9th, because even though the meeting of the 11th may have been there for certain items, if the board thought that there was something that was not on the agenda for the 11th, but that was quite urgent, they could, change the agenda to include that.
That is correct, Chairperson. I speak under correction now, but I'm not sure that there was a meeting scheduled for the 11th.
Well, I'm going according to Mr. Tsotsi's evidence. His evidence was that after the cancellation of the meeting of the 26th of February, a meeting was scheduled for the 11th. And my understanding of his evidence, or I may have misunderstood him, my understanding was that by the 9th there was a meeting scheduled for the 11th, but I may have misunderstood him.
Yes.
And maybe it was only arranged for, it was only fixed on the 9th after the meeting. But my impression was that it had been scheduled earlier.
Okay.
Yeah, but that might not be correct.
Chairperson, that may very well be so. I
Yes.
can't confirm. But
Yeah.
I just wonder if it's okay with you. I thought Mr. Seleka had asked a second question around
Yeah.
this point about the war room. Was there a second point, or did we cover that?
No, I think it will be clarified
Okay.
by what the chairperson has proposed, could be the way forward. Yeah. Just wait. Ms. Klein, I want to show you your email in regard to the meeting of the 9th. Because I hear you say to the chairperson that, again, you raise concerns about issues of governance. Chairperson, that email is contained in the bundle we used yesterday for Mr. Tsotsi. I think the witness will be, it's an email on page 1092, Eskom bundle 07 bracket B.
Eskom bundle 02?
07
07.
bracket B.
Okay.
Bracket B, page 1092. Chairperson could use my bundle.
Registrar, please take the one that Mr. Seleka is offering.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Klein, you recognize that email?
Yes, I do, Chairperson.
So that's your email sent on Sunday, 8 March 2015 at 22:49. It's sent to Zola Tsotsi and Malisela Pokubie, subject urgent meeting 9/3. Dear Chairperson, please accept my apologies for tomorrow's meeting as I will be out of town in the morning. Should you, however, not be quorate, I am back in Johannesburg at 1800 and would be available for a meeting in the evening given the significance of this gathering. Having read the proposed discussion and resolution being sought, I would like to be included in the working committee to deal with the issues as articulated in your document. The reason for this is, as chair a statutory body subcommittee, I feel that I will add value in helping the process. Kind regards. Maybe you could comment because I don't see your concern regarding governance issues.
I think you are right, Chair. It is not there. I think I sufficiently raised it at other times where I thought that I'd raised it here as well.
Just to put context to this so that the chairperson would follow, this is a meeting that was called, as we heard yesterday and the day before, by notice sent Sunday evening. That is, according to Mr. Tsotsi, after he had a meeting in Durban at the President's residence. So he sent a meeting with a memorandum attached and a resolution attached. And I think that's what you are referring to,
Yes.
the proposed discussion and the resolution. So you expressed your interest to serve on the committee, the subcommittee that, according to the resolution, was going to be set up. Is that correct?
Obviously, after a meeting and deliberation that was not going to take place at a particular meeting.
Yes. No, all I'm saying is you expressed interest here to serve on that.
Absolutely. And you want me to respond to that? Why would I have done that? Or not necessary? Chair?
The chairperson will allow.
Okay. I looked at this and I looked at the gravity of what was being proposed. And at the time I felt that, there were two people, if I remember the committee that was being proposed, and you can help me. It was Mr. Tsotsi himself, it was Zetembe Kosa as the chairperson of People and Governance. It was Twaita, who was I'm not sure what she was, chairperson, I think, of Audit and Risk at the time.
Yes.
And I think it was Audit and Risk. And I just felt if there was going to be any significant pieces of work done, that social and ethics, which I was chair of at the time, needed to be a part of. The granular detail of the inquiry was obviously not understood at that stage, and that was going to be unpacked, my understanding, at the meeting of the 9th. So if there was going to be a committee, I just felt that it would be significant to be part of it, to understand what it was, particularly given some of the resolutions it sought when I looked at it. That was what that was about.
Thank you. Let's take.
This or must
I can have it back, Chairperson.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson. But then, Ms. Klein, okay, that you were not able to attend the meeting of the 9th. The next was the meeting of the 11th of March. Let's ask you this, and you could tell the chairperson whether you were aware or not at the time, prior to the meeting of the 11th of March, that Mr. Tsotsi had had a meeting with President Jacob Zuma and Ms. Dudu Myeni at the President's residence in Durban.
Prior to the meeting of the 9th, prior to the meeting of the 11th, sir?
Prior to the meeting of, let's start with the meeting of the 9th.
Yes. I would not have had any knowledge of that. I wasn't close to either the chairperson at the time, who was Mr. Zola Tsotsi. I was not a confidant of his. I've never met Ms. Myeni, and I've met the president, but that was in my role as as a board member of the Reserve Bank. I'd never met the president. So the answer would be no. I would not have been aware.
Would you have been aware of the meeting between Mr. Tsotsi, the president, and Ms. Dudu Myeni before the meeting of 11 March 2015?
Yes. Yes, Chairperson, because...
You had done the...
Sorry, Chairperson.
Or you didn't attend the meeting of the 9th, so you might not have had.
Exactly. I was not at the meeting of the 9th, but obviously, lots of things were discussed and deliberated, and obviously people gave me feedback, and that's when I became aware of what had been discussed at that meeting.
I see. Yes, because I've seen in your affidavit you say you didn't attend and you relied solely on the minutes of that meeting.
I have to agree that would be a chair, but if you think about it, I mean, people were getting very excited about the meeting of the 9th, and people were phoning each other. If you ask me now who said what, I probably wouldn't know. So I could only rely on what was being written. But I mean, I'm not going to go as far as saying to you that nobody phoned me and nobody spoke to me. I mean, people were becoming very excited about what they'd heard here at the meeting.
So you would have become aware, or rather, let me ask you, how would you have then become aware that there was a meeting between Mr. Tsotsi, the president, and Ms. Dudu Myeni?
If memory serves me well, Chairperson, that is what Mr. Tsotsi had shared at the meeting of the 9th. And that's where, after that meeting, I would have become aware of how exactly the resolution itself found its way into the Eskom board.
Prior to the 11th of March, prior to the meeting of the 11th of March, did you receive minutes of the meeting of the 9th?
Chairperson, I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
I really...
Yes.
I'm not sure.
But what you do say is that after that meeting, you became aware of at least some of the matters that were discussed through talking to some or other members of
Correct.
the board,
Correct.
because people were phoning one another to talk about that meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, I'll go as far as saying my understanding was that at the meeting, people were uncomfortable with certain things. And this is why they've asked that the minister come and represent them. In fact, if I think of my own words at the time, and this is just me saying what I felt, what I can remember feeling, is why would the president have a meeting with anybody regarding Eskom? It was just, these were thoughts that I had, let alone Ms. Miheni, because, I mean, she wasn't a part of it. And in my own mind, and I think I may even have said it, because remember in Parliament, Chairperson, you've got your affidavit, and then you've got being cross-questioned, so you've got the transcript as well. I think somewhere in between, somebody actually asked the question. And I remember thinking or feeling that I want to hear from my shareholder representative, who, as a board member, I report into, what she saw as the issues and what she'd like us to do. I couldn't quite understand why a sitting president would be involved. But those were my thoughts. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you did say in Parliament that you were surprised why the president was involved. I'm trying to look for, because we have a transcript of your testimony there, they will get the reference page.
Of course.
But then you were able to attend the meeting of the 11th.
Correct, Chairperson.
And the minister arrives at some point to address the board on that occasion. Correct?
That's correct, Chairperson.
So you were present when the minister was there?
That is right, Chairperson.
Could you tell the chairperson what, in your recollection, was the minister's message to the board?
Well, before that, Mrs. Lagarde, don't you want her to talk about the meeting of the board that happened before the minister came? I think so that if there is any difference between what Mr. Tsotsi said, what happened at that meeting, and what she says, we can know where the differences are.
Indeed.
Thereafter, she can talk about
Yes.
the part where the minister came, and thereafter when the board met after the minister.
Yes.
Indeed, chairperson.
Okay. So just talk about the meeting of the board before the minister came on the 11th. What was discussed and so on and so on.
Thank you, Chairperson. One or two of the things I remember specifically was something I addressed with you earlier. We had a set agenda, but I remember Mr. Tsotsi starting the meeting telling the board that he found it rather unacceptable that board members were interacting on a regular basis.
Were interacting among themselves.
Yeah, so a board member would phone, let's say...
Another board member.
No. A board member would phone an executive.
Or board members interacting with the executives.
Executives.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
And Mr. Tsotsi was saying, and I think I understood why he was saying it, because, they were just... I'm loath to say this, but I'm going to say what I feel, and then, Chair, you can decide how you want to take this. There were so many stories. Everybody you'd walk into had a different story about a different issue. No board I'd ever sat on made me as tired as Eskom. You yourself raised something yesterday about that there was one meeting we left at 12 o'clock. That was a regular occasion. I mean, my family never saw me. So, in any event, one of the things I remember raising with Mr. Tsotsi, which I said to you earlier, was the whole issue around critical matters being raised by board members And I actually want to give you an example, if you may. I'm going to step slightly out of it. And I'm not sure, Chairperson, whether you have or dealt with TNA or whether you're still going to deal with TNA. I'm not sure.
We've dealt with TNA.
You have?
Yes.
But if you'll just indulge me, just to...
We've dealt with TNA,
Okay.
but if you have knowledge of some things that you would like to share with the Commission on TNA, you can arrange to give us an affidavit where you can share more. But if in regard to the TNA, you have something that's relevant to what you want to say, you can refer to it.
Yes, Chair. It's something that's relevant to it.
Yeah.
I remember Mr. Tsotsi giving evidence and saying, because the question I think you posed at the time was, why did somebody, what happened when the resolutions went out? I was the board member who refused to sign it. Very simply. I come out of corporate, and if there's any wrongdoing of any kind, you suspend people. And maybe a little bit more ruthlessly than in public sector, but that's how it works. You suspend people, you do the investigation, and then you have a disciplinary and you bring the people back, or you dismiss them. So when I get asked in a resolution to sign something on TNA, I'm the one board member who refused. And I wrote to Mr. Tsotsi. I got no response. That's what I was referring to. That was one example of, you asked what we discussed on that day. It was issues of governance. Me saying, Chair, you don't want me to speak to the executives, but you are my chairperson. These are critical matters we're talking about. I need you to respond. And in that meeting, Mr. Tsotsi, I've got to give him credit for that. He, like I said earlier, he apologized and he made sure with the secretary that they would in future not handle it in a particular way. If board members had critical matters, they needed to be dealt with. That was one issue. Then I know that Mr. Matona went through, he did his CEO report to the board. Now, I've also been in preparation for today, been listening to evidence being led by other people. And one thing I know that Mr. Matona said was that he had done a turnaround plan. And I remember hearing your concern about how could we not have considered the turnaround plan, or how could we, well, Chairperson, I must tell you, I never saw a turnaround plan. Or maybe, let me qualify it. I'm a banker. If you're in a job for 6 months and you've given me a turnaround plan, I expect you to say to me that we were standing at zero profit. I've given the board a plan which said we were going to get to 60 million in 1 year. We're now in month 6. So month 6, I'm on track. We've got 30 million banked. That for me is a turnaround plan. But what Mr. Matona did say in the particular meeting that you're referring to on the 11th, the minute is clear when Mr. Matona says, I am busy developing a turnaround plan. The turnaround plan had not been developed. If you read the minute, it says, I am busy developing a turnaround plan.
Okay.
That's the first.
Okay.
So we spoke about the
which
issue of governance.
suggests that it did not exist as yet.
As yet.
Yeah.
And in the minute goes further of the 11th, because I'm going to go and listen to it again in preparation for today. Mr. Matona says, as part of the induction, I have raised issues of the turnaround with the board. So understand, I think it's not that one person is lying and another person is not lying. It's more a case of interpretation and how people saw things. Maybe in government, a turnaround plan is good enough if I give you an update of where I am. The world I came from doesn't work like that. Then the next thing is, at that stage, Mr. Zola, the chairperson, walks out of the meeting and puts me in the chair. Says, Mrs. Klein, would you mind chairing? I then chair it, and Mr. Matona goes through in granular detail, the suspension, not the suspensions, the people had moved around, the liquidity problems that they were having. I've got it listed. And I remember and I don't know that I'm helping myself here, Chairperson. I'm talking maybe more than what evidence leader wanted me to. Maybe you... Okay.
Well,
Let me be guided by you.
we asked you, or I asked you what was discussed
So this is
at the
what was
meeting, so that's what you are telling me.
Okay.
Obviously, you are looking at important things that you can remember.
So one of the things that was very evident, though, is that the board apparently had not engaged on the turnaround plan and did not ask questions on it. Chairperson, that's not true. I that night sat and listened to 10 questions the board asked around. So what I'm saying, if the turnaround plan was the CEO update that we received, there were 10 questions asked on it. So, and that is what happened prior to to the minister's arrival. I was chairing that part of the meeting, Chairperson.
Okay. Then now we come to the meeting when the minister arrived. Yeah, I think then you can tell us about that one.
And I know I'm on national television, so I don't want to give away my age, but I was about to say thank you for reminding me, Chairperson. Chairperson, the minister arrived, and to the best of my recollection, because there was no recording of that. I think we switched off the recording, if I remember correctly.
Prior to the minister arriving, what was your understanding of what the purpose of her visit to the board was?
My understanding was that the minister was going to give clarity on the meeting of the 9th, where, based on what I'd heard, and I don't think the minute was out at the time.
About the suspensions and the inquiry. About
the inquiry, which may lead to suspensions because of the problems that the company was facing.
Yes, okay. So she came and what happened?
She came in and she gave us, if memory serves me correctly, and I think I've got it in my affidavit, some of the stuff that I remember.
Yeah, you can have a look if you want to refresh your memory.
Can we just look at that, please,
yes.
Chairperson?
But Mr. Sileka can guide you.
Affidavit.
Yeah, well, I'm referring to what happened when the minister...
That's on page, it starts on page 8, paragraph 29.
Yes. And Chairperson, if I may, I think I've dealt with what was discussed at the meeting. Mr. Matona took us and outlined the problems facing Eskom at the time, and I list those.
Yes, and Chair, I see you are going to answer the chairperson, but may I make a comment on this as you go?
Yes.
I hope you don't forget, because I'm concerned that, Ms. Klein, some of the things you mentioned about the CEO are not contained in your affidavit. You mentioned to the chairperson that he said he's developing a plan. So he didn't have a plan. But nowhere in your affidavit do we see that as a concern on your part. What do you say to the chairperson? Because it becomes difficult for us to put that to him so that he can answer if we don't have that version from your side.
Chairperson, and let me apologize to you.
Yeah.
Remember, as I said to you, I sat here yesterday and I was listening to what Mr. Tsotsi was saying in exactly the same form. I mean, sorry, Chief.
Yes, no, I think I understand your situation. You deposed to your affidavit at a certain time and you dealt with issues that you dealt with. But you are saying that yesterday you listened to Mr. Tsotsi's evidence. And I think you said you also have listened to the recording of the evidence of other witnesses relevant to Eskom, I think. And part of what you are doing is when you are aware that Mr. Tsotsi or Mr. Matona has said something that you don't agree with, you are now responding to that, which you might not have done in your affidavit. That's what your position is.
That's exactly, Chairperson. You've summarized it correctly, and I
Yes.
apologize to you if it
Yeah.
complicates matters.
Yes, but it's fine. It is important. If you are aware that somebody has said something about a certain meeting which is not true or which is not your understanding of what happened, it is right that you should say, I heard so-and-so said this, but that's not my recollection, or that certainly didn't happen. So it is in order. It's just that Mr. Selega was saying it's not in your affidavit, but I think that this would be your explanation,
Yes.
insofar as you may be responding to something that you became aware of after the affidavit.
Thanks for understanding, Chairperson. It's just I take the Commission very seriously, which is why I'm trying to shed as much light, but I do understand it can create.
No, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.
So you were taking us to what the minister said.
Okay.
That will be in the next page, on the next page.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you. Yes. The minister, she said she was aware that the board may have been feeling that they've been falling by the wayside because of the war room. And I think there was, like I said, lots of noises, particularly this board is saying, but we're getting all this. So that was the one thing. There was concern regarding the interest rate which Eskom had negotiated and agreed in the market for some monies raised, or some bonds that they had gone out and raised. Okay, the inequality of coal price purchases, with some companies being paid more than others, mismanagement of the load shedding process, the purchasing of diesel on the hoof, which was a big issue for us at the time. The appointment of the board did not bring about any problems, and the process ran smoothly. I must say, I extracted this, Chairperson, from the minutes. So then there must have been minutes. I'm just thinking now, I said there wasn't a recording, but there definitely was minutes. I've actually almost just lifted and dropped what was there. And that ARC may procure the services of an independent, credible forensic investigator to undertake the inquiry proposed by Mr. Tsotsi, and not someone who had previous dealings with Eskom.
So, sorry, where were you reading that one?
Sorry, I'm reading still on page 9.
Well, 31G.
I'm not sure what you called it.
No,
Chairperson?
the paragraph 31.
Oh, sorry, yes, that's correct.
You say the ARC may procure the services of an independent, credible forensic investigator to undertake the inquiry proposed by Mr. Tsotsi, and not someone who had previous dealings with Eskom or whose independence may be in doubt. So all this is what the minister said.
My best recollection between what I said and what I've seen in minutes, and I've seen maybe notes, but I've been taking notes of my own.
Yeah. Well, let's look at paragraph 30 to start with. It says the minister also addressed the board that day, once again expressing her concern around the board getting a handle on the business. The minister conceded that he had no right to instruct the board on any matter regarding the conduct of Eskom's business. You see that?
Yes, I do, Chairperson.
It's a startling statement, and I hope you will be able to explain it to the chairperson. Why would that statement have been made by the minister?
Obviously, Chairperson, I'm not the minister, but this is what I'm hearing, and that's what I've recorded. That the minister, my understanding at the time was that she's saying, I can't instruct you what to do. You've been given a challenge, a big challenge. So you need to find the best way in which to resolve this big challenge. Being obviously load shedding at that stage. We were at stage 3, there was only up to stage
She's saying, I may have views, but
I cannot.
you must make up your own mind.
I think that's what I meant when I worded it in a particular way. I didn't get the impression that she was there to instruct us on anything, but more than ever, remember the meeting, the way I understood it, was based on the meeting of the 9th, where, from what my recollection is that board members expressed concern that they're not getting from the shareholder representative, as Mr. Tsotsi was outlining it. That was my understanding. So I guess what I mean there is, not a guess, reading it, the minister is not here to instruct us, she's here to give guidance on, and maybe answer questions. That's my understanding.
Well, recall that the meeting of the 9th had one agenda item. And that agenda item entailed the two documentation referred to in your email, the proposed resolution and the memorandum. So the meeting with and the board members at the time, as you also confirm, they say to the chairperson, well, why doesn't the shareholder representative come and address us on that? Let her come and address us so that we understand what's going on. Then the meeting of the 9th is scheduled. Isn't that the minister comes to that meeting knowing that I'm going to be engaged on this aspect, the inquiry and the suspension of the executives? Could that be the reason why you're writing there that that's what she said?
Chairperson, that sounds fair.
Yes, so because she will come there informed, as Mr. Tsotsi said, about the purpose why you want to see the minister. But you would have heard yesterday that when we played the audio, that portion which says we must protect our leaders. And Mr. Tsotsi said that was Ms. Mabuda saying that. Don't mention the name of the president in this room. Don't mention the name of the minister in this room. We own this decision. Seems to go contrary to what you write there about the minister.
Chairperson, understand, in answering the question, that I had my views on the sex. I had my views. What Ms. Mabude said there is what Ms. Mabude said. I mean, this was not the first time that I sat on a public sector board, but it certainly was the first time I sat on a board the scale of Eskom. So, and I mean, much as I am, I believe, not necessarily a novice to governance, sitting and listening to Ms. Mabude, remember Ms. Mabude had been on the board before. Ms. Mabude was in a second term, as was Mr. Tsotsi. So I would be taking guidance on how things are done on a board the size of Eskom. So yes, I say the minister also addressed the board, once again expressing her concern. The minister conceded that she had no right. So if the question, Chairperson, is my view between what Ms. Mabude said and what the minister is doing, I don't know that I really have an opinion. Remember, I'm new, not as a board member, but new in public sector, and the person making the statement, who was Ms. Mabude yesterday, when I listened to it, maybe previously they had interactions where they've been told, you know, it's a board decision. Don't pull the minister in, don't pull the, I don't know, I can't talk to that. But typically, my view, the shareholder representative is the person who would come and speak to us, which was the right thing there. I hope I'm making myself clear. And I hope I'm not, because, I mean, I listened to Ms. Mabude, and you would even hear, I think your question even was, so why did nobody say anything? The real question is, having not served on a government board this size, maybe this is how it has been done This is Ms. Mabude has not come here yesterday. She's been here before. So I'm not sure where she's coming from. Maybe there's been challenges around that particular point before. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Ms. Klein, what we are, the proposition, if it is a proposition even, but look at it this way. We are outside the meeting. Third parties, we are not in the meeting. The board members are there in the meeting. They have just met with the minister. And after the minister, they're talking about the suspension of the executives. And Mr. Tsotsi has said, this was an instruction from the president. The president wants this to be done. And the minister was also here. You heard on the audio that the minister had given guidance. When I asked Mr. Tsotsi what was the guidance, he said it was proceed with the inquiry, proceed with the suspension. In that context, with the group in the boardroom, one of the members says, we should not, he's warning all of you, we should not mention the name of the president. We should not mention the name of the minister. We must protect our leaders. It is in that context I'm saying this statement doesn't seem to be a correct reflection of what the minister might have said to the board. In fact, if you listen to Mr. Tsotsi and read his affidavit, he says exactly the opposite of what you're saying. That the minister did say we must initiate the inquiry. You seem to touch on that in paragraph 31.g, but he goes on to further say the minister did say we must suspend the executive and edit the financial director. So there's a discrepancy there.
I hear that, Chair, but please understand from my side, Mr. Tsotsi went out to meet the minister. I'm not sure if these things were discussed outside of the meeting or not. I can only talk to what I remember and what I saw in minutes or what I remember seeing. I mean, when I said the minister conceded that she had no right to instruct the board, that's what I believe that I heard.
Yes, I think what Mr. Seleka is doing is to give you an opportunity to reflect on what you have said happened at the meeting, or what you have said the minister said. Reflect on it in the light of what he's telling you about what Mr. Tsotsi said, for example. And see whether you say, no, what Mr. Tsotsi says, insofar as it is inconsistent with what I'm saying here, is not true, or whether you are saying, well, I believe that this is what was said, but I'm not going to say definitely what Mr. Tsotsi says was said did not happen, but on my recollection this was said. So it's just to see where the differences are between your version of what happened and Mr. Tsotsi's version, and be able to say, here are the things that I remember quite well. This did happen.
Yes.
This I think did happen, but I'm not sure. That did not happen. That's the kind of,
Yes.
that's the opportunity, that's what he wants you to do, to say, how much of this can we take as definite in terms of your recollection?
Chairperson, this is how I recall it.
Yes, yeah.
I heard Mr. Tsotsi yesterday, and I'm not sure that what Mr. Tsotsi spoke about yesterday definitely was not discussed in my presence.
Yes, okay.
That much I can say.
Yes.
Whether it was or actually didn't happen, that I
Yes.
cannot say. But this is my recollection.
Yes, okay.
But then I don't think I've answered, Chair, on the point of Ms. Mabude saying that we have got to protect our leaders. she did say that, and I've given you my answer to how I saw it at the time. Remember, I've never come into any board and said, because I'm new, I'm not going to take a position. Because if you listen to all those tapes, my voice is heard. I had many ideas, because I normally am quite vocal. But I cannot, I still believe that the minister said she's not here to instruct us. Whether there was another discussion where that was direct, or whether there's a recording which you can say to me, but hold on, here we've got it, the minister said it. So I don't
Okay.
recollect that.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. But you can't say, well, just to be clear on it, you can't say that Mr. Tsotsi doesn't give a correct version of what the minister said. Because you can't recall exactly what the minister said.
No. I can't recall, but you know what stood out for me yesterday when we were speaking? When I was sitting here listening. The one thing I cannot remember, and this is, so I'm not sure that I'm hurting anybody, but this is inquisitorial. You asking me. I don't remember the minister talking about the finance director. That part I don't remember, because you'll read in my affidavit, which I'm sure you're going to come to later. My recollection of how we got to the fore is very different to Mr. Tsotsi saying that the minister added that name.
Yes. No, that will be important. So Mr. Selega will know whether he will invite you to tell us now your recollection or later. But we ought to hear what your own recollection of how the financial director got added to the list.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, but the three were mentioned.
Are you talking about in the ministers' meeting?
Yeah, because you say you don't recall the minister mentioning the FD, the financial director.
Chair, remember the question, if I understood it correctly, was that is it correct that the minister spoke about the three and added the finance director? And I'm saying to you, my recollection was that the minister said she would support whatever the board decided was necessary to do. That's how I remember it. Okay? My recollection of who and why is not at all as Mr. Tsotsi is putting. That's not my recollection.
So what is your recollection of how it came about that the financial director's name was added?
Can I maybe talk to the suspensions in and then show you where, for me, I maybe am struggling with my own recollection?
Oh, okay. Or maybe we leave that you are going to deal with various matters. When you come to that point of suspension, then you can deal with that. So
I will do.
Mr. Selega can just guide you on the aspects you need to deal with.
Thank you, Chairperson. Ms. Klein, I also want to refer you to Dr. Ngubane's affidavit.
Is that here, Chair?
No, yes, it is in your bundle.
Oh, in my bundle.
Yes, it's in your bundle. I did refer to you earlier. Bundle, Eskom Bundle 03.
Okay, I got it.
Thank you. Chairperson, that's on page 601. Page 601. There too.
That can't be 02.
601.
Yeah, the bundle. I thought you said the bundle is Eskom Bundle 02.
03.
03.
03,
Okay.
Chairperson. You have it, Ms. Klein?
I don't have 03 here. He's going to give me 03. No, I'm sure they've got it here.
Page 601.
Okay. Yes.
Paragraph 4.16, Ms. Klein. So Mr. Ngubane, Dr. Ngubane also deals with the meeting of the 11th of March. He writes, the meeting adjourned to allow the minister to address the board on these matters. The minister came to address the board on 11 March 2015. Minutes of this meeting are next. Can you turn the page to 602? Although the minister did not direct the board to suspend the 4 executives, she raised concerns of her own against them. The concerns related to the war room, which she suggested, complained it was not receiving consistent information from management, and therefore it could not develop strategies to turn around Eskom and stop load shedding. The minister felt that the presence of the 4 executives might hinder the investigation. Do you recall that being said by the minister?
I remember the discussion around the war room.
Okay, I'll give you a chance, but specifically about the minister felt that the presence of the 4 executives might hinder the investigation.
I must say, Chairperson, I cannot recall that. I cannot recall that specifically being said.
We have also recently received the affidavit from the company secretary, which is not yet part of the bundles. Chair, we have copies, I believe.
Yeah.
Only 1 copy we have.
That's fine, but you can
Make
read
reference
the relevant part or point out the points she makes or he makes to her for her to comment.
Correct, Chair. Thank you.
Comment on.
I'll hand you a copy because the company secretary was also in that meeting with the minister. In the meeting with the minister, the following matters were discussed: the bargaining device. Point 1, point 2, the minister stated that she had no right to instruct the board on what to do, and that the meeting was.
Go closer to the mic. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair.
And tell us what paragraph so that those who might wish to look at the relevant paragraph later know which paragraph.
Yes. Paragraph 13 of this affidavit.
Okay.
She mentioned that she is aware that after the establishment of the war room, the board had sought or fallen by the wayside. The minister stated that the last war room meeting had demonstrated that even information which comes from Eskom was not reliable. And it goes on to the next page, paragraph 13.5. He writes, the minister said, in order not to compromise the investigation, the executives who were involved must step aside for the duration of the investigation, and a report by the forensic investigators may be given in 3 months' time, even if it was an interim report. So that's the affidavit of Mr. Malisela Pukubye. He says 2 things you can hear. The minister said he will not instruct the board, but the minister again also says, in order not to compromise the investigation, the executives who were involved must step aside for the duration of the investigation. Any recollection on or comment on your part in regard to that?
Chairperson, like I said to you, I remember the minister saying she cannot instruct us. I do not remember her saying, I remember her talking about the four executives, but the detail around it, I cannot remember after 5 years, unless I'll go and listen to the recordings. But if that's, look, Malisela was the secretary. I don't think he would get it wrong. And he's saying it, and it looks like Dr. Ben said it. So then I'd got to concede that that was then being said. It's not covered in mine because I didn't remember it like that. But then I've got to accept that that would be the right version, sir.
We do not have the recording of that meeting.
Chairperson, even if you don't have the recording, the fact that I do not remember this, and this is the best of my recollection, but I doubt that Malisela would have gotten it wrong. He was the company secretary, and Dr. Ben clearly maybe made better notes than me. I don't know. I would concede, Chairperson, that that probably then was it.
Did you support the establishment of the inquiry and the suspension of the executives?
I absolutely supported the inquiry.
The suspension?
I would be lying if I said to you I didn't. I supported it, sorry, Chairperson. I supported it for reasons that I've articulated in my affidavit.
What are the reasons?
I remember that the chairperson gave us reasons why he believed that the suspensions ought to happen. And he gave us reasons for the FD, which is the part, remember the earlier question about the minister and the FD? I couldn't remember that part. I really, and listening to that, I'm not sure if it was 3 or 4, because by now I don't remember it. But I remember the chairperson telling us that there are 4 people that needed to be, that in his view, would be best if they were not there. And the one person, there was something the person had done which was inappropriate, and that was the reason given. The second one was the FD. He actually gave us a reason for the FD by saying she was involved with there was some tender, and apparently she'd gotten involved with it. I don't remember what exactly it was about the Disa Matona, but it was a lot of deliberation. There were 4 things the chairperson gave us for the 4 people. Then there was a whole lot of debate about, but chairperson, how can we just take it on your say-so? You telling us these people have done what you say, but we've got no evidence to prove any wrongdoing. Why would we, based on what you're saying, just suspend people on this? We can't suspend people because you're saying that there was, let's say, tender rigging, or not tender rigging, but you spoke to somebody about procurement. I mean, we don't have sufficient to suspend people based on that. There was a lot of toing and froing. Eventually, the agreement was to suspend people. I'm going to take that back. Not suspend, but to ask them to step aside for the tenure of the investigation, because we were told you had 3 months, which ended at the end of June. This is what the chairperson told us. And his view was that if the people were there, they may slow down the investigation, which by this time we told we had 3 months to do. So if you ask me if I was going to support it, I was going to support it not because of wrongdoing, but because I believed that an inquiry of this nature, which we were told was what it was going to be, was for me the line in the sand, that I would be able to then determine, so what is real and what isn't. War room is saying one thing, executive saying another thing, chairperson is saying another thing. As a board member brought in and charged with turning this organization around, an inquiry would help us to get to what exactly we were dealing with. So I was left with supporting the suspensions on the base that the people would step aside. And there was even I think there was a meeting with the legal personnel to say, what does step aside mean? Can we ask people to step aside so that they don't slow down this inquiry? Because the one thing that was clear, Chairperson, is that it had to be done by the end of June. And that was my reason. The reason I supported it was very simply the complexity, the fact that this was falling apart and we didn't have money and we needed to get a grip on this.
Well, we are at 1 o'clock, Mr. Slager.
Yes.
Well, you said earlier on, Ms. Klein, that the board found itself in a position where it was not receiving information on a formal or official basis with regard to, among other things, the war room and so on. But the more I think about what the picture that seems to emerge in relation to Eskom at the time, it looks like it was quite a confusing picture, because you have the management of the entity of Eskom. They are supposed to run the day-to-day operations of the company, and the CEO must give strategic direction and all of that to the entity. You have got the board, which is, as I understand it, the highest authority in the entity. You've got the shareholder represented by the minister. And then the president appointed or set up the war room. So the war room was meant to grapple with the challenges of Eskom relating to load shedding. But of course, doing that might mean you look at a lot that was happening at Eskom to answer the question, why can't load shedding be sorted out? What is preventing it from being sorted out? So there would be a question of, who must the war room interact with? Must it interact with the board? And the board interacts with the management, the executives? Or must it interact with the executives, bypass the board? What if the war room says one thing and the board says something else? So what are the executives supposed to do? And then while you are looking at that, there is another meeting taking place in Devon, where the chairperson of the Eskom board is invited. And it seems that the person who is dominating the discussions in that meeting, or who is leading the discussion, is somebody who has nothing to do with Eskom. Is somebody who is chairperson of another SOE. The minister, who is the shareholder representative, is also not there. So now you have the war room that side, you have got the Durban meeting, you have got the board. It must have been difficult to know who does what, who is driving in which lane. And it must have also been quite tough for the executives, I would imagine. But anyway.
Is it an opportune time, Chair?
Yeah?
Is it an opportune time?
Yes, I think it is. Let us take the lunch break. I don't know, Mr. Seleka. I know that you announced yesterday that Dr. Ngubane would start his evidence this afternoon.
Yes, Chair.
I don't know whether we will get to him or not. I'm just saying you might wish to assess the situation depending on how far you think we'll go with Ms. Klein.
Yes, Chair.
But of course, it is important to deal with all important issues properly,
That's right.
so that if we can avoid her having to come back some other time because some issues were not dealt with properly, we can avoid that.
Yeah.
And I don't know what Dr. Ngubane's situation is, but from what you told me, he appreciates that even if he started his evidence this afternoon, he will continue tomorrow.
Indeed, Chair.
But it's fine. It may well be that we'll start with him, even if we do 1 hour or 2 hours.
Yeah.
That is something on which we can add tomorrow.
Chair, indeed. I could approach the chairperson, as it were, in chambers, and then arrange with the parties
Yeah.
after the chair and I have considered the way forward.
Yeah, no,
And
that's
then we can come
fine.
and place it on record.
Yeah, no,
when we resume.
that's fine. Okay, we'll adjourn and we'll resume at 2:05.
Thank you, Chair.
We adjourn.